We're on the bottom of page 22b, the Mishnah. אחד בור הרבים ובאר הרבים ובאר היחיד עושים להם פסים. If you look here, you see these lines. This is the pasim, this is the be'er. So he said, if it's a public well, they make this line in between, and they said, אבל לבור היחיד עושים לו מחוצה גבוה 10 טפחים דברי רבי עקיבא. But if it's in the individual, they make it a petition in a size of 10 handbreadth. That's the word of Rabbi Akiva. Rashi here explained that ipaske maya midkar ahadade, which means if they have no water, they reminded each other that it's a issue of Shabbat. Now continuation here on Rabbi Ovadia ben Bartenua, he said when he used the term Bora Rabim, the public well, he said שלא התירו פסי ביראות אלא שיהיו מים מצויים לבהמות עולי רגלים. The only reason they allow it, it's in order to have water for the pilgrims. That's the way they allow it. וכל זמן שאין שמיים אין לה פסים תורת מחיצה. As long as there's no water here, there is no any entitle of petition. That's the word of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Omer, by the way, both of them, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, are the 10 martyrs that we mentioned on Yom Kippur and Musa. Anyway, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Omer, אין עושים פסים אלא לבאר הרבים בלבד. You make this pasim, these lanes, only for a well that belongs to public. Velash'ar, but the others, which is what? Individual well, or a individual, some type of a bowl, sometimes of well. Osim chagora, you make a ropes around, gavoa 10 tfachim, length of 10 handbreadth. Now, several points involved here I would like to share with you. First and foremost, Rashi here said that the be'er harabim de'i katarten lemalbiuta. There are two things, an extra, that it's a bore and it's a public. But he says v'chen halacha, and that's, by the way, the halacha. Soon you see it in the Gemara that halacha follow Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. But he said ואין מותר, that's רבן יובדיה בן ברטנוע, ואין מותר למלות מים ולהוציא מן הבאר על ידי פסי ביראות אלא כדי להשקות בהמתן של עולי רגלים ובארץ ישראל בלבד. It's only in two conditions, to feed the animals of the pilgrims and only in the ארץ ישראל. אבל להוציא מים כדי לשתות האדם עצמו אסור, but for individual it's forbidden. So Tosfot Yom Tov asked a question. He said, so why bother to mention a people if you are forbidden to use it for a human consumption? So why bother with that? So he explained here, and that's, by the way, the Tosfot as well. He just paraphrased that word. So he said, "Veikshu batosfot deim ken amai ba'inan shiu ruim la'adam." So why bother to say that it's good for human consumption? ויש לומר שאם דלל לצורך בהמה ונשתיירו שם שר אל האדם. If he dwell already for animal needs and there is still left over, then and only then he can use it. Iname, another option, לתחילת התיקון לא התירו לו צורך בהמה. Originally speaking, when the sages made this decree, was for animals' need. אבל בשכבר נתקן לצורך בהמה, שרעב לצורך אדם. But since they put a decree for animals, then they allow for people to use this as well. So now another point here, that it's Rashi said that chagora, that you make this according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, you make a robes around that well. So he said that heikef shel chavalim, that's applied to a robe. Tosfot said mechitza, which means that it's a petition. Now we're going to our page of the day, is 23. Omar Rav Yosef, 23. Omar Rav Yosef, Omar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Final halacha, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, that you don't do this type of line, pasim, only for a public, a well of public. Something similar. Omar Rav Yosef, Omar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, lo utru pasei biraot, that the boards surrounding a well are permitted, ela leber mayim chayim bilvad, only to running spring water. So the second Mamar says Ritzricha. Why we need to they do both? The Rav Yosef, name of Shmuel, said Ashmina. If Shmuel wants to teach her, halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. So he said Avamina. You may think that the whole idea of allowing these lanes around any place of water, it's applied to the Rabbim, only for public. Va'afilu mayim mechunasim. Even you have a well that contains some of raining water that belongs to public. Ve'haidek tani. And what Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava learned, that you don't do this type of pasim, this lane, only for the purpose of dwelling water for what? Be'er harabim, only for a public well. So you may mistakenly thinking that it means that it's not included a well of public. Le'apuke mid Rabbi Akiva. What did Rabbi Akiva said? He said that you can make these lines for a private well. So this come to teach us that even a well of water, a spring well of water, you do this type of pasim, this type of lane, if it's only, as we said, for what? For public use. That's what Rashi said. Kamash velad. So here we come to learn to what? Halacha ke Rabbi. So kamash lo utru pasei biraot ela libe'er mayim chayim. The board surrounding a well permitted only in a case of well of spring water. And the other side, v'yash minan ber mayim chayim. If Shmuel teaches us that only idea that we allow this type of pasei biraot, this line, that it's only to do with what need for animals, you need to dig a water for what? Be'er mayim chayim, which is a spring water. Hava mina, I may thinking, which means that you're always allowed to do this pasim, and it makes no difference if individual or public. Kamash melan, will come to hear what? Halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, that even for this type of well, you don't do this pasim only if it's a public, which means we need both rules of Shmuel. We need the first to understand that that's excluded individual well, and we need a second one to say that even is a public, so we have to have these restrictions involved with it. So now the halacha is clear that the whole idea of we allow this pasei biraot, this lane around the well, it's applied towards to the well, but not a regular something, only well that contains spring water, and not just a well. And it's only if it's a public and not private. Now we go to a Mishnah that dealing with, first and foremost, we are now differentiate between something that's used for dwelling and something that's used for all other purposes. For example, let's trace a situation that you have mechitza, you have a petition, and the petition, it's around some flowers, some vegetables, something that you have, you circle around just to protect those products. So it's basically not a place for dwelling. You remember the chamamot, you know, those places, right?
The huts.
The huts. So you have places that you put a borderlines, you put a partition, you want to protect something inside that not necessarily a dwelling place. So according to the Torah, it's considering what? A private domain.
Mm-hmm.
But the sages said that you cannot carry there on Shabbat only if there are certain conditions. Even by the Torah, it's a private domain. So here is the point. They said, "Ve'od amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Vava." It's another point Rabbi Yehuda ben Vava tells us. Hagina ve'hakarpav. If you have a garden, you grow vegetables. Ve'hakarpav. Karpaf, it's like a enclosed courtyard used for storage. So used for storage, Rashi said that can be any, you can put materials there, you can put the sukkah, you can put a lot of things in that storage room. So he said, Shehen shiv'im ama v'shiraim, that there is in a 70 cubit, and the reminder that it's not a full cubit, al shiv'im ama v'shiraim umukafot gader gavoa 10 tfachim. Again, if they have by 70 cubit and some reminder, and the whole surrounding by wall, 10 handbreadth, and therefore you can go ahead, metaltelim betocha, you can carry. Why? Because Rashi said, since it's close to your house, so if you're owner of that garden yard or karpaf, right, you always, and you intend to use it constantly. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, so again you see that it's a reshut yachid but need to have some conditions. Rabbi Yehuda Omer afilu en babor, even you don't have a place that you collected the raining water and you put it there to use it, vesiach, so even you don't have a big tunnel that open for water, or me'ara, which is, what is me'ara? It's like a cave that you have a entrance, but you have a roof inside there. So he said, metaltelin betocha, you're allowed to go ahead and carry there. Why? We said it earlier, because a person gets used to go there frequently. Rabbi Akiva Omer, afilu en ba'achad mikol elu metaltelim betocha, even he doesn't have even one of those conditions, you can go ahead and carry there, ubilvad shiu ba shivim ama v'shirayim al shivim ama v'shirayim, which means as long as they have 70 cubit and a reminder by 70 cubit and a reminder. So according to Rabbi Akiva, even that is not a place that it doesn't have a well, as long as they have a more than 70 cubit and a little reminder. By remainder. Mm-hmm. So it's fine. So far what we're talking about the measurement of that side and all these conditions that we can carry. Now we talk also about the appearance of that place, because sometimes the length or the width is longer. So he said, Rabbi Eliezer אומר, אם הייתה אורכה יתר על רוחבה, אפילו אמה אחת הם מטלטלים בתוכה. He said that if the length is greater than his breadth, so even 1 cubit you cannot carry them. אומר רבי יוסי אומר, אפילו אורכה פי 2 כי ברוחבה מטלטלים בתוכה. Even the length is twice as the breadth, you can go ahead and carry them. Right? So basically you see here that it's also the way that it appears, it makes a difference. So Omar Rabbi Eli, Shamati mi Rabbi Elazar. He said, I heard from Rabbi Elazar. Va'afilu, or there are some who said Eliezer, Va'afilu hi kibeit kor, even the yard or karpaf is in the size of beit kor, which is 5 times bigger than Beit Se'atayim. So because they have a fence that is in a 10 handbreadth, you can carry there. V'chen shamati mimeno. I also heard from Rabbi Eliezer, Anshei chatzer sheshachad echad mehem v'lo irav, if you have a situation that people sharing the Eruv, and one of the people in that Eruv he did not participate with that Eruv Chatzerot, not because of a reason he maybe forgot about it. So what happened is, during Shabbat, he basically annulled his part in order to allow everyone else to carry in that development, in that yard of the development. So he said, Beito asur milachnis, his own house for that individual that forgot, you cannot bring items from his house to that yard and vice versa. Ulotzi lo. Avalahem, but other people in that development that participate with that yard, mutar, they can go ahead and carry even to where? To his house. That's what she said. So basically, we learn here the very important concept that's called bitul reshut. That someone who forgets, he needs to annul his right in that sense. So therefore, it becomes all of his neighbor's part. V'chen shamati mimenu. Now, is another thing I heard from him. שיוצאים באר קבלין בפסח. So Rashi tells us here that it's some type of maror, bitter herb. So now, וחזרתי על כל תלמידיי וביקשתי להם חבר. I went to all the students of Rabbi Eliezer and I tried to find someone who heard this statement from him, and ולא מצאתי, I couldn't find anyone. So Rashi here said that he went to all of them, and that's the three, and he says they couldn't find anyone. Tosfot have a different avenue here, and the key point is that Tosfot I'm not talking about Tosfot in this page, I'm talking about page 26. But Tosfot basically elaborate on that. So let's see first the Rashi. Rashi said, לשלושה דברים הללו אם שמעתי מפיו ולא מצאתי. So I couldn't find anybody whom I heard this from him, and I couldn't find anyone. Tosfot ולא מצאתי, in page 26b, he said, ולא מצאתי לי חבר, היינו דווקא בתלמידיו, which means specifically in his student I couldn't find anyone. דתניא בכל שעה עד שבאתי לרבי אליעזר בן יעקב והודה לדבריי. So it doesn't mean that no one is just talk about specifically his disciples. Iname, another option Tosfot said, לא מצא חבר ששמע מרבי אליעזר כאמר. He couldn't find anyone that heard it directly from him. So again, it's a several school of thought here. Now we're going to the Gemara. Mai tana dektani ve'od. Since we use the word ve'od, meaning furthermore, in addition. So what's the addition in regards to a garden or karpaf that the Mishnah used the word ve'od? Ileima. If you said mishum detana leichada lechumra, because we learned one place of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava for stringencies, that it means that you don't do pasim, these type of lanes, only for what? For a public well. So vektani acharite, now we add another thing, lechumra, to stringencies. So he said that even karpaf, that you put it for the purpose of dwelling, if it's a bigger the size of Beit Sa'atayim, you cannot use it. Mishum ha'chektani ve'od. So therefore we use the word ve'od, meaning in addition. Ve'ha Rabbi Yehuda detanela. And what the Rabbi Yehuda said, beginning of our chapter, chada lechumra, which means one rule, stringency, is that you don't do circling around a dwell area, the lane of the dwell, more than Beit Sa'atayim. Muktane achrite. So we learn the second part that if it's a public path, it's divided between these two parts. They put it in a side. Veloktane ve'od. So you see there that you don't use the word ve'od. So you see that even both points is for stringencies. So why the Mishnah put in addition the word ve'od? So the Gemara responds and it said, Hatam afseku Rabbanan. Over there, in regards to the word of Rabbi Yehuda, the sages stop between the first rule for stringencies in the beginning of the chapter to the second one. Hacha lo afseku Rabbanan. Both idea of stringencies, one follow the others. So the Vilna Gaon go and explain here that those stringencies that we talk here, it's basically come one after the others, is the cause of the using the word in addition, ve'od. So now the Gemara asks, ve'kolecha de'afseku Rabbanan. So you're going to tell me that in every place in the Mishnah, when you brought two quotations from individual Tana, and the word of the sages that disagreed, lo ktane ve'od, we didn't use the word in addition. Ve'ha Rabbi Eliezer desukah. You remember the famous Rabbi Eliezer that said it is an obligation to sit, to dwell in the sukkah. Ve'afseku Rabbanan. That the sages who disagree with Rabbi Eliezer between his first statement and the second, ve'ktane ve'od, and we use the word in addition. So you see, you remember that Rabbi Eliezer said that the person needs to eat 14 meals in the sukkah. You remember we studied it during the festival of Sukkot, each and every day, night. And the sages said it's no limitation, which means if he, for example, decided to fast and not to eat in a sukkah, he can do it. But if you want to eat, you have to eat in a sukkah, excluding the first night of the festival that you have to eat in a sukkah. So then you have the word ve'od, that Rabbi Eliezer said, if someone did not eat in the first night of the festival of Sukkot, he should do it at the last day. And the sages said you cannot put something that it's already done earlier. It's like, so you see here the word ve'od. Hatam b'miltehu de'afsekuha. Over there, it's talking about what? And they interrupted Rabbi Eliezer with ruling with regard to his own topic. But here, however, hacha b'miltach rite'afsika. However, they interrupted Rabbi Eliezer in regard to a different manner. So you see here that the first statement, it's already forgotten, and it's not to put together a statement that it's not a sequential link between what is already being severed. So you see what? So you see here that it's the ve'od is not necessarily connected to the previous one. Now we study in the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva said, "Afilu en ba'echad mikolel metatlim b'tocha." Rabbi Akiva said, even they have none of all of these elements, still you can go ahead and carry them. We turn to 23b. Rabbi Akiva ainu Tana Kama. So there's no difference between Rabbi Akiva and the first Tana that said at the page 18 that allowed to carry in the garden and karpav up to the Beitzah time. So what's the difference? What's the difference between Rabbi Akiva and the Tana Kama? Ika benayu davar muad. So it's a difference when it's a tiny amount, which means that the Beitzah time, that's the measure of the karpav that the sages allowed to carry. So if it's more than 70 cubit and a little more by 70 and more that Rabbi Akiva allowed. The Tanya. Rabbi Yehuda אומר, דבר מועט יש על 70 ואמה ושיריים, ולא למדו חכמים שיעור, וכמה שיעור שעתיים. So he said it's a little bit, a small tiny amount, that one of the size, the square measuring, that exceeds 70 cubits and a remainder. And what's the measure? They said Beitzah time, but it's not giving exact one. Well, what is an example? He said, Kechatzar HaMishkan, like the courtyard of the tabernacle. That if you remember in the Torah, we said, in Parshat Truma, we said that the size was 100 ba'ama, verochav 50, that is 100 cubits by 50, and the whole together is 5,000 square amot. Okay. Now, since we talk about the courtyard of the tabernacle, so we need to have the measurement of a karpaf we're allowed to carry in Shabbat. Menah and Mileh. How will we know that applies to Chatzer HaMishkan? So here you see a picture number 137 from Meorot. Omar Rav Yehuda said, because the Torah said in Shmot, in Exodus chapter 27, said as follows, said, Omar Rav Yehuda Omar, דאמר קרא אורך החצר 100 באמה ורוחב 50 ב-50, אמרה התורה תול 50 וסבב 50. So he said, you have here the 100 cubits, and you have here 50 cubits. So what happened is that we have this square area, and the Torah tells us that you have here the 70 plus 2/3 and 2/3, because you have 10, 10, 10, 10, which is 40, and then you have this 10, which is divided, you have here 10, 10, 10, 10. So that's you're taking the 50 and you circle by 50. So this is a 50, you see this yellow area, and you see this orange area, it's 40, and then the green, it's 10, and then the bluish is another 10. So you have altogether 100, this is a 50, you take the 50 and it's a 50 here. Okay? So it means that's implied to another halacha, which is the size of karpaf, something like that you need to use for Shabbat, that you derive indirectly from the law of the tabernacle. And that's basically the foundation of how the Vilna Gaon understand it, because basically if we look at the way that it's written in the tabernacle, and you read earlier the way that we take the karpaf, that's matching to say that the tabernacle also apply to karpaf as well, and derivative from the karpaf, from the tabernacle. So the Gemara said, Pshita dekra b'maiktiv. So here, again, want to use a little bit the Rashi. So he said here, Hashkev achat למזרח, achat למערב, achat לצפון, ואחת לדרום. If you take 10, you see this red part. Picture 138. Is that clear? Clear? Okay. You have 10, 10, 10. Okay? And you have here the 50. So how much is all together? You have 70 cubit plus 4. You see this little tiny blue? This is the 4 handbreadth. So if you take 4 pieces of 10 and you put in the 4 corner, which is this, the green part, you have 10, 10, that it's basically 60 by 60 handbreadth. If you make it 3 of 2 tfachim, if you see here this space and this space, okay, so you make in each one, this is the bluish around. So you have together 70 what? 70 cubit plus 4 handbreadth. Correct. No, but you go by the corner, and the corner, and the corner. So it's basically 70 plus 4. But anyway, it's 70 plus the 4. Okay? Next. So he said, Pshita dekra b'maiktiv. What is the simple part of the Mishnah? Just leave it open. Amar Abaye ha'amed mishkan al sfat 50. If you take the entrance of the tabernacle of the end of the 50 cubits from the east side, כדי שיהיה 50 לפניו ו20 אמה לכל רוח ורוח, as we said, 20 to each part, And that's the way it should be. Rabbi Eliezer אומר, אם הייתה אורכה, if the length, Rabbi Eliezer said, if the length was bigger than the breadth, so you cannot carry. והתניא רבי אליעזר אומר, אם הייתה אורכה יתר על 2 ברוחבה, if the length was twice as the breadth, so he said, אפילו אמה אחת אין מטלטלים בתוכה, even one single אמה, you cannot carry there. So just one second. אמר רב ביבי אבר אביי, כי תנן נמי מתניתין יתר על פי 2 ברוחבה תנן. So that it means only if it's a twice, even in 1 cubit, you cannot carry there. If that's the case, there's no difference between this one and Rabbi Yossi, which means that the word of Rabbi Eliezer becomes the same as Rabbi Yossi. Which means that they take it as a square, and they said the square, that the sages square it, because the sages calculated the squares with a diagonal. So Rabbi Yossi prefer in an issue to make it a square. So therefore, up to Beit Tza'atayim, you can carry. And according to Rabbi Eliezer, you cannot prefer the square way even as an issue. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi said that even the length is double than its breadth, one may carry it inside it. It Rabbi Yosef Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Achak Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Bibi Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Achak Rabbi Akiva, Betravayu lekula, meaning both is a leniency. Utzrich adiyash min Achak Rabbi Yossi Avamina Deika Shomera or Bedira. I will say that these apply only when the watchman's booth or dwelling place. But he said, because Rabbi Yossi he didn't say if you're allowed to carry the karpaf that doesn't have this watchman booth. Kamash melan lacha ki Rabbi Akiva, that you don't need it. V'yash melan lacha ki Rabbi Akiva mina de'arich uktin lo, that you're not allowed to carry in this a garden that it's long and narrow. So only if it's a square. Kamash melan halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. Come to see that to clearly state that the courtyard need to be square. Now in regard to karpaf. So the Braita said karpaf shu yoter mibeit tza'atayim sheukaf lediרה. Now we look at the picture 139. karpaf שהוא יותר מבית צעתיים שהוקף לדירה. You see it? יותר מבית צעתיים שהוקף לדירה נזרע רובו, if most of the karpaf he planted the seed, הרי הוא כגינה ואסור. You see what happened here? You can call it as a dwelling place or not? No! Grandson of Vilna Gaon, you tell me. Is that considering a dwelling place or not?
Can't see the picture.
He's planning everything.
You see the picture?
I don't think so.
Not a dwelling place. What's the reason that it's not a dwelling place?
There's no roof.
Beside, what else? Most of this part used for what?
For planting.
Agriculture, yeah.
Planting. So if he closed it up and the planting was a very small side and the rest he planning to have a dwelling, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But because he put a sign that most of the part he planted the seed,
mm-hmm.
so therefore you cannot call it a dwelling place. And it's considering as what? As a planting area, like a large garden,
mm-hmm.
and therefore ve'asu, you cannot carry it. ניתר רובו, הרי הוא כחצר ומותר. So again, if it's already planted with trees, so that's different. Why? Because many people like to have the shed, especially in a desert.
Because trees may not necessarily be for agricultural purposes. It may
so
just
people
be...
go there and sit under those trees. So that's considering as a courtyard, it's like a regular yard, you can carry. So the Gemara said clearly, look, Nizraru bo. If most is plant, we see, then you cannot carry it. Omar Avuna b'red Rav Yoshua l'amaran ela yoter mi bet sa'atayim, only above the size of bet sa'atayim. Why? Because then it became like a carmelite. This part became like a carmelite. The part was planted, and therefore it forbids even the area that is not planted. Aval, but if the area of planting was beit sa'atayim or less, so you can carry. Keman, who hold that? Ki Rabbi Shimon. Ditnan Rabbi Shimon omer, echad ginot, ve'echad chatzerot, ve'echad karpefot. He says, no difference if it's a garden, if it's a courtyard, if it's karpefot, it's considering one domain, reshut achat hen lekelim sheshavtu betocham. From the beginning of Shabbat, any type of utensils that was there, but not for velo lechelim sheshavtu betoch habayit, or not with regard to utensils that began Shabbat is in a house. LeRabbi Shimon name kevan nizraru bo, according to Rabbi Shimon, because the greater part of the karpefar was sown, have miuta. The rest of the part is that it wasn't planted was the small part. Page 24. Batila legabe roba. So this is basically nullified in connection to the greater part. So it's like the entire karpaf was planted. V'havale karpaf yoter mi bet sa'atayim ve'asur. So therefore it's more than bet sa'atayim, it's forbidden. Ela yad parachi itmar. Ha-miut ha-sharif is a small part, you allow. Omar Avuna b'red Rav Shmuel amran l'adula ve'beit sa'atayim is not the size of beit sa'atayim, but beit sa'atayim asur, keman kerabanan. So the Rabbanan, the sages disagree with Rabbi Shimon, and according to them, karpav that it didn't put together as a dwelling place, including a yard, it's considering a two separate domain, and you cannot carry from one to another. But according to Rabbi Shimon, those roofs and yards and karpefot, it's all one domain, and you're allowed to carry from one to another. Rabbi Yehuda Bidifti matne lekula. He learned it is a leniency that you cannot carry any place if most of the karpaf was planted, was sown. Hamiuta shari, but if it's small part, you can go ahead and carry. Amar Ravuna ben Rav Shmuel amaran ela bet sa'atayim. That's specifically bet sa'atayim, אבל יותר bet sa'atayim asur. If it's more bet sa'atayim, because you cannot carry from Carmelit to the yard, because it's considering a private domain, or from the yard to Carmelit. So it means that the part that wasn't planted, wasn't sown, it's open to a place that you cannot carry there, and there, because it's no partition that separate between them, and because it's no partition, so you cannot carry them. So Keman, whom Rav Una b'red Rav Yoshua hold, they said he hold Rabbi Shimon, that he said that you're allowed to carry between a chatzer to karpaf or yard and vice versa, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and carry in a place that most of the spot is a courtyard, and small part, even the size of beit sa'atayim planted, but according to the sages you cannot carry between the courtyard and karpaf, therefore you cannot carry even in a place that in other words, by having most of the part sown, that basically in a way cover everything. Even you have a small part that it's not, the status it's already there. First halacha is Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 358, mechitza she'ein ba diurim. It is permitted to carry in an enclosed area, even if it was not enclosed for the purpose of residence, provided that it's not larger than the area of 2 Beit Seah, or about a 5,000 square cubit, even if its shape is not square. This according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi, and the Gemara said, Halacha follow their opinion. Now the question is, what is a Beit Seah? What is the Se'atayim? So there is a Rambam in Ilchot Shabbat chapter 6 that said the measure of 2 Beit Se'ah utilized a various area of halacha is equal to 3 area of the courtyard of the tabernacle, 5,000 square cubits. So basically, as we said, we juxtapose between the tabernacle to our measurement here of the car path.